I'm Groglander, and an hour-long video. Yeah, you'll understand why if you bother to watch it. Welcome, by the way. This is part 3 of my Sonic Unleashed comparison. Now, after completing the first day levels in both versions, you get the following cutscene. Although, to be more specific, this scene is from the PS2 version.
Still no luck finding anyone who knows me.
Don't worry about it. Maybe your memory will come back on its own. Remember anything yet?
Nope.
Oh well.
Sonic? Whoa! Mr. Monster Guy is back!
So when the sun goes down, I turn into this?
Are you okay, Sonic?
I'm fine. I just need to be careful who sees me like this.
Sonic! Sonic, look!
What is it?
Oh, it's hopeless! The whole planet is split apart! We're doomed! Oh.
Mister?
Oh.
Hey, mister! Hey, don't cry. Ice cream. How about some more of this super tasty stuff?
What good is ice cream at a time like this? Oh.
Sonic, your arm just stretched.
Weird. But it could be useful.
Oh.
Now, people who are familiar with voice actors might recognise the ice cream seller as Dan Green, the same man who does Yugi from Yu-Gi-Oh! And up until Sonic Colors, Dan Green also voiced Knuckles the Echidna from the series. And he also voices another character in this game called Professor Pickle. But we'll get to him when we get to him. As you can see, night has fell upon Apatos, and things look pretty much the same except at night time. Although what is a nice touch is that in both versions of the hub worlds, the characters and the people change during night and day, and say different things and do different things. Which is a nice touch. It's a small touch, but it sort of illustrates the difference between night and day, which is what this game is about really. That, and it's all about creating a world for the player. And yet again in the PS2 version we're stuck talking to people to progress. But it's something as simple as clicking through menu screens really. So yeah, it's not too fun, but it doesn't really get in the way too much. Now, I do like the hub music you're hearing now, if you can hear it over me talking. It's sort of a mellow guitar, acoustic guitar track. And yeah, it's really nice, really mellow. Now, as you can see there, we get sort of a moon tablet. That's something which I guess I didn't explain in previous parts, is that in the PS2 version, you collect tablets to unlock the sun and moon doors. Sun tablets for sun doors, moon tablets for moon doors, and if you get both or all of them, you unlock the boss door. Back to Sonic again. Now, something which is kind of odd, I guess, is that each continent has these shrines where you enter the levels.
It kind of feels like
And all the continents have these levels, but what's strange is that you only play as Sonic in the first shrine. In all the other shrines, you go around the shrine as the Werehog most of the time. Which the cynic in me believes that they did this because they know if a person plays the game for like the first hour or two, they want to give the player the impression they're playing as Sonic more than the Werehog.
You're looking all scary again. Don't you get tired of switching all the time?
And with that, we enter the moon door to enter the first set of moon levels. And with the loading screens edited out, you're welcome by the way, we're given a set of missions to introduce us to the mechanics of the Werehog. Similar to the day tutorials. So, at least they're consistent.
Move the left analog stick rapid.
Now, moving around as the Werehog is okay at best. If I'm honest, when you're doing stuff like this, it's fun because he runs quite fast and can swerve around corners. And that, I'll admit, that's fun. That's something fun to do as the Werehog. And actually, to take it back, moving as the Werehog is good. It does become an issue during the later parts of the game, where you have to do something quite precise. And then I'm not too comfortable with the way he moves. He seems to be a bit heavy, which is obvious because he's the Werehog, he's meant to be a bit brutish. But at some points when you're trying to do platforming, he seems to weigh like 10 tons in midair. And here we are introduced to the stretchy arms mechanic. Which honestly, I like. Even though there are points where I'm jumping and I'm thinking, please grab a ledge, please grab a ledge. Now, to give you a very, very important tip, is that when you're jumping, and this is for both versions by the way, don't try and time the grab button. Jump and hold the grab button. Almost as soon as you jump and just hold it. Because if you do that, he'll grab the ledge or item or whatever as soon as it's in range. And holding it constantly while you're jumping works a lot better than trying to jump and then time it. So like jump and then time it so you grab the ledge. Don't do that. Just jump and hold the grab button all the time. And you'll have an easier time as the Werehog.
That's a lot of bad guys, Sonic. You're gonna have to take them down.
Now in the PS2 version, the combat is very simplified. But you know what? I prefer it. In fact, I'm trying to remember, and I think I died once or twice during combat in the PS2 version. Whereas in the PS3 version, I died quite a few times from combat. So yeah, the PS2 version has simplified combat. You can get through most of the game by pressing the same combo on the circle button. But, I prefer it. I prefer simple combat. And I'll admit, if I wasn't a Sonic fan, I probably wouldn't have bought this game because I'm not a fan of combat games. Just for the simple reason that I end up just spamming the same combos. And for me, fighting games get repetitive anyway. You just attack, and so on and so forth. Now here we see the wheel, the experience wheel, in the PS2 version. As you can see, it gets leveled up by experience points, and when you hit a certain point, you learn a move. Like I just learned the Warehammer there.
You can grab once you've grabbed a box.
Now we're about to go all Donkey Kong on your ass here because this is the pick up and throw mechanic. And it does exactly what it says on the tin. Now something you might hear in the background now is the battle theme. I've actually been told there are actually 4 versions of this song, and I think there is, but the problem is all 4 versions are very similar to each other. So similar in fact that I think most people don't realise there are 4 different versions of that battle theme. And I bring up the battle theme because when you're playing as the werehog, you hear it a lot. Now, the way I'm going on, you might think I might not like playing as the werehog. And if I'm honest, I would say it's decent. It's not the worst thing ever, it's not the most horrible gameplay mechanic, as some people would say. But at the same time, it's not as fun as it could have been. But like I said before, I'm not a fan of combat games, so arguably I'm probably not the person they're trying to please. But yeah, the werehog, playing the games again, both versions, I actually enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would have. So it's decent enough. Not great, not the worst thing ever, but decent. And that was the tutorial that shows off the special move. And we are finally given a full level to play with. Now, something about the PS2 version of Unleashed is that they give you several werehog levels. During the early part of the game, I think that they give you approximately 3 night levels. And as you get on later, they'll give you 4, and even on the last level, they give you 5 in a row. Which is not really my favourite part of the game, if I'm honest. Now, these levels, even though they give you like 3 to 5, they aren't actually that bad because each one is like 5 minutes long. And when you compare it to the PS3 version, you get 1 werehog in that version, although that 1 werehog level can last about 25 minutes. So really, you're playing the same amount of time, the same amount of night levels in both versions, approximately. It's hard to count, really. Now, I said before I didn't really play fighting games. Although one fighting game I do remember from my childhood was is Golden Axe and Streets of Rage, which were also made by Sega. And essentially they're side-scrolling beat-em-ups where you run across a level from left to right and then beat up enemies. And they actually have the same problem as the werehog levels, for me. They get a bit too repetitive. But then again, games like Golden Axe or Streets of Rage, they're just short arcade beat-em-ups, really. Whereas this game goes on for quite a while. Now, this section pretty much speaks for itself. You get a sort of mystical door, and you have to find 3 keys to unlock it. And that's an element the werehog levels seem to have. They seem to be part combat, part platforming, and just a smidgen of puzzle. Whereas the day levels just seem to be all out speed. And is that an issue for the game, or does it give you both? For me, I'd rather have Sega incorporate platform elements in Sonic levels. Because I think their attitude with this game was, okay, some people like speed, some people like platform. So we'll have day levels where it's nothing but speed, and we'll have these night levels which have a focus on platforming. It's kind of like Sonic the Hedgehog 1, where you play the first zone, which is Green Hill, which is primarily all about speed. And then you play Marble Zone, which is primarily all about platforming. And lots of people hate that. Oh, by the way, that moon should be blown in half. Sega. Anyway, my point being is that not many people like that aspect of Sonic the Hedgehog 1. You know, they get the rush of speed in Green Hill and they seem to be brought to a screeching halt in Marble Zone. And maybe that's the problem in this game. Not the fact that there's speed and platforming in the same game, but the fact that you get one, then the other. So it feels like you run fast as Sonic, then you get brought to a screeching halt as the werehog. But like I said, playing this game before the Werehog isn't really that slow, and he isn't really that slow, and his levels weren't really that much of an issue. Now, to talk about the setting of this game, you have levels based on real-world locations, which is a theme I think works really well, actually. I think there are some levels in the game which look too realistic, like the environments are brownish or greyish, and they don't look as fun as these sort of escapist, fanciful levels which we've seen in other Sonic games. But at the same time, having the real world locations is really quite impressive. We get to see Sonic run across the Great Wall of China, or run through some Egyptian ruins, presumably. And I believe I was saying before in a previous part, that's a theme which could be expanded upon for another game, perhaps. I don't think there'll be a Sonic Unleashed 2, just because it was kind of poorly received. And for me, that really isn't an issue, not having a sequel to this game. Because essentially in the future games, they took the good parts of this game, developed them further, made them even better. And then we got games like Sonic Colors and Sonic Generations, which I'll say right now, I think are better than this game. You know, this game started that whole boost genre of Sonic games, and I'll give it credit for that, but I think the other two improved on the formula. Now, here we see the ranking system, and you can see there I get an S rank, and there are 3 aspects when it comes to getting an S rank for the night levels, which you are graded upon. One is time, how fast it takes you to complete the level. The second one is experience, how much experience points you gather. The third one is rings, how many rings you collect. And as you can see in the previous results screen, I got 3 of those aspects, so I get an S rank. And yes, getting an S rank in the night levels is far easier than getting them in the day levels. But then again, in the day levels, they count you on nothing but time. But yeah, you know how I feel about that.
There's no...
Yes, Chip. Press a switch, open a door. Do 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 do. Like, we're not familiar with that game mechanic. But then again, I guess any game could be somebody's first game. Now to get back to the theme of this level, which is sort of based upon Mykonos, which is an island in Greece. And you can see it as the sort of lovely white sweeping architecture, the windmill, the seaside setting. And it's a very calm, relaxing theme. I do like it as a starting level. I do think it's a bit on the bland side, but I like it. And I'm also reminded of Sonic Generations, the 3DS version, when the levels of that game were first leaked. And a lot of people thought they might have put Windmill Oil in that game, but it turned out to be a level called Water Palace, which was a level theme used in Sonic Rush. And really, I'm not sure if that was a good choice for Sonic Generations, using the Water Palace theme. It didn't seem to me like a very interesting level theme. But then again, when I thought it was Windmill Oil, I thought exactly the same. And surely, if you have trouble telling the difference between two themes, maybe they weren't the most interesting of choices to use. But like I said, it's a good theme for a level or zone. I wish they would call them zones, by the way. But yeah, it's a good theme for a level, very calm, very beautiful looking, in the daytime at least. And again, it fits into the whole theme of using a seaside hill, sort of a themed level. And what I mean by that is, in the 3D games, they have a tradition of starting off on a seaside themed level. Like Sonic Adventure 1 had Emerald Coast, a sort of white cliffs of Dover type level. Sonic Heroes started off on Seaside Hill, which was sort of a beachy green hill type of level. Sonic 2006 also had Wave Ocean, which in turn was a tribute to Emerald Coast. But then again, when you look at the 2D games like Green Hill Zone, Emerald Hill Zone, Angel Island Zone, those are all tropical zones that are next to the sea. So really the whole idea of starting off on a sea level has always been there. Now something you might notice there is that you get these item boxes. The sort of red orbish ones, which were first used in Sonic Adventure. And those are the sort of 3D equivalent of the old 2D item boxes. And you can see there, the red ones have experience points. So I would recommend you you collect those. For two reasons: you get S ranks, and I'm sure we all care about S ranks. And the second reason is that, well, you get experience points. You become even stronger, which probably makes the later parts of the game a lot easier. Because obviously if you're leveled up, you would have an easier time with combat. Oh, and by the way, those swinging platforms are a bitch. They're a bitch to time, they're just a bitch to use. And particularly on the later levels of the game, those sort of rotating swinging platforms really screw me over. Because I would hang on them, swing around in rotating pattern, but then swing directly down into a bottomless pit, or swing off to the wrong side. But I'm pretty sure you'll see an example of that during the later levels of this LP. And I remember what I'm trying to do there. I'm trying to ring that bell. Maybe there's rings that come out of it. Would have been a nice touch if it did have rings in it. Would have been a nice reference to a previous 3D Sonic game. Now, to talk about this whole Greek theme they have going on here, it kind of reminds me of the Storybook series. In a sense that I think there were rumours, or at least fan speculation, that the next Storybook game would be about Greek mythology. And I think that would be a really good direction for that series to take. If you recall, the first one was Sonic and the Secret Rings, and that was based upon Arabian Nights mythology, all genies and magic and what have you. And the second Storybook series was based off King Arthur and the Black Knight. Well, it was called King Arthur and the Black Knight, and it was based off King Arthur and Camelot, to be precise. And, you know, that was the one with Sonic and the Sword, which everybody loved straight away, and no one at all bitches about. Yeah, to defend Sonic and the Black Knight, which is funny because I haven't really played it. So I'm not going to defend the actual game because I don't know it, but I'll defend the concept. I think Sonic with a magic sword kind of works for the tone of the Sonic series. And really, it was a spin-off. It was about Sonic stepping into the role of a knight. So I personally wouldn't expect it to play too Sonic-y. Although I do know that was an issue with it, that it didn't play enough like a Sonic game. Which I guess I could understand. Ugh. Just looking at that footage now reminds me of a control issue with this game, and it really is a big one. Essentially, in the PS2 version, when you want to run, you press the directional pad twice in any direction. Like, if you want to run forward, you press forward and forward twice in succession, and he runs forward. And my issue with that is that when I'm sort of trying to do some precise platforming, I find myself edging towards an edge. Like, I'll go forward a bit, then go forward a bit more. But when I'm trying to just edge slowly forward, there's a good chance that I'll activate the running thing, mechanic, and I'll run straight off an edge, like I did just then. And that aspect is a constant source of annoyance for me. And yeah, anyway, to go back to the Storybook series, I actually think Ancient Greece would be a really good direction for them to go. And so, when I think about it, which Sonic character could play which Greek hero, I sort of go through it in my own head, and I think it could really work in some cases. Like, for example, Sonic would play himself because he would be Sonic trapped in the world, of course. Knuckles the Echidna, I think, would make a really good Hercules. Because Hercules, the original character, was kind of like a strong guy who wasn't too bright. Although in the mythology, he was kind of a dick to everyone. But anyway, I think Knuckles would make a good Hercules. Sort of like the dumb hero, I believe, or the dumb strong hero. Even though Knuckles isn't really that dumb, he's just poorly written, I think. Now, as for Tails, I could see him playing someone like Icarus. And if you don't know who Icarus is, he's the gentleman who escaped a prison by fashioning some wings out of feathers and glue. Well, his father made the wings for him, and Icarus attempted to escape. But of course, Icarus didn't listen to his father and flew too close to the sun. And his wings melted, and he died. Oh well. And I think that would make a good sort of role for Tails. Because Tails is he's sort of younger. He might make a few more mistakes than the older characters. And also, Tails does seem like an inventor. So I think in the mythology, he could be the one to invent those wings. That he's a sort of flying character anyway. So, yeah, a character comes up with an invention to allow him to fly. That seems to suit Tails. And, what other characters? Oh yes, Achilles. The badass warrior. Who was played by Brad Pitt. But anyway, I think Achilles would be played by Shadow, the Hedgehog. Just because, you know, Achilles, he's sort of like a ruthless warrior who's nearly unstoppable, although he does have that one weakness. And to me, that does seem like Shadow, or at least in personality-wise. Now, when it comes to the female characters, I'm not sure who would play who when it comes to that. And actually, when I think about characters in Greek mythology, the female characters are either gods or beauties like Helen of Troy, or monsters actually like the Gorgon. That's a good point. There aren't that many female heroines in Greek mythology. I could be wrong. You could probably point some out to me. Like I know about Xena, and I've actually forgotten if Xena was an actual Greek hero or some TV character they made up. Anyway, my point is, who would be who? Would Rouge make a good Aphrodite, the goddess of love? I guess Blaze the cat. I could imagine her being Athena, the goddess of knowledge, because Blaze's personality is very upright and stern and serious. Which is probably why I like Blaze. She's probably the only female character that actually has a decent personality. Although I do actually like Amy Rose as a character, but I like it when she's being fun and perky, and when she's not being like the rabid fangirl of Sonic, and seems to be stalking him across the world. That's sort of an aspect of Amy Rose I'm not too keen on. And it's also an aspect I wish the writers would sort of tone down or drop even. And since I've brought up the topic of other characters, I'll just talk about something which this game did, and that's really have not many characters. Now, the previous installment of the main series before this game was Sonic 2006, and that had like 9 playable characters. And part of me does feel that is that if you have lots of characters to sort out, then that means you have a lot more work for yourself, and you have to do a lot more. You have to sort out a lot more styles, a lot more gameplay aspects, and that might be too much for a development team to handle, and you might end up having like 9 styles, like in Sonic 2006, and none of them play really that well. Whereas in this game, there are only 2 styles of gameplay, day and night. So, again, from a development standpoint, that must be easier to develop if you only have 2 styles to work out, and thus the idea is that each style would be good, since the team only have 2 styles to concentrate on. And I guess that theory pans out in this game, because both styles, unlike other Sonic games, they're not really broken. Like I said, each one could have been developed better, both day and night. But yeah, each one worked fine, and even are enjoyable. So, by concentrating on only 2 styles, it seems to have worked out for the best. Now, at this section here, if you can't see, there are these bee enemies. And they are the worst enemies in both versions, I would say. Because they're just so hard to hit. Fortunately, in the PS2 version, they're a lot easier to hit, because the throwing objects seem to have a better lock-on system. You just saw there, I picked up a crate, and it sort of locked onto the enemy, and I threw it. And also in the PS2 version, they seem to be easier to kill. And for me, that's kind of a problem. If the most feared enemies in your game are the bees, it shouldn't be that way. But yeah, in conclusion, the bees are a bitch. Now, something you'll see here in the PS2 version is that the Werehog levels are kind of more free roaming. Like, I do really like that they give us this wide open space in this part of the level, where we get to explore some Greek ruins. Kinda reminds me of Marble Zone from Sonic the Hedgehog 1. The surface parts of that level anyway. And it's also reminded me of the Disney's Hercules movie. Because I know there were scenes like this, with the same lighting and the same kind of architecture. And I know that movie gets a lot of love, and I can see why people like it. But for me, there seems to be quite a lot of plot holes in that story. And I didn't see when I was younger, so I guess I don't have the nostalgia for the film Hercules, but in conclusion, I'm not a fan of it. It's okay, I suppose. Hope I don't offend too many people with that. Because I'm not sure if you've noticed, but on the internet, people can get quite touchy about their childhoods. No, really, they can. Anyway, I don't mean to offend anyone, but I'm not a fan of that film, Hercules. And with 3 keys collected, we're on to the next section. And these night levels on the PS2 version are nearly over. And again, I think I said this in a previous part, but I think the PS2 version makes more of the themes. Like before, we had part of the level set in the town. We had part of the level set amongst ruins, like we just saw. And now we have this sort of a fight scene outside a fountain. So it definitely does use the themes of the zones, if you will, a lot more than the PS3 version. And another game mechanic here, which I really think drags the game down, although I can see why they would put it in a sort of a brawler section, would be the classic: an invisible wall appears, and it doesn't disappear until you defeat the said amount of enemies. Which does seem to me like a artificial extension of the game, just trying to really pad out the gameplay. And with that, I've completed the last night level of the PS2 version. So in conclusion, actually quite fun. It's very easy, very basic, and just eases you into the game mechanics. Oh, and joy of joys, we get another attack for the Werehog. In the PS2 version, you can see press triangle after second hit in a combo. So it's mash, mash, hit triangle, mash, mash, maybe hit triangle again for a different move. Very simplified, but in my opinion, very streamlined, and I actually prefer the combat in the PS2 version. I'd rather them keep it simple, if I'm honest. And after completing the first night level, in the PS2 version, you are treated to the following cutscenes.
Hey, Tails.
Sonic?
What are you doing out here?
Sonic, is that really you? That's a new look. What happened?
You know me. Never a dull moment.
Want some chocolate?
Thanks. That's some story. I'll bet that means that you turning into that and the planet breaking apart are somehow related.
I need to find Eggman and make him fix this, and fast!
About that, I think I know someone who might know something about what's going on here.
Oh, really?
Professor Pickle over at Spagonia University. I came to this city to gather some data. If we add that to his research findings, we might be able to get to the bottom of all this.
Spagonia. That's a continent over. An easy jog if the planet weren't broken.
No problem. My Tornado 1 will get us there in a flash. Let's get going.
Leave it to you, Tails. Let's get moving.
And after those cutscenes in the PS2 version, we are introduced to the world map of the game. And it is quite a fancy world map, because you get this globe in which you can rotate and have a look at all the locations. So anyway, that's how the PS2 handles the first night level. Let's see how the PS3 handles it. Right after the first day level, you get the same cutscene with the Dan Green ice cream seller. And like in the other version of Sonic Unleashed, you get to see the hub worlds from both night and day perspectives. It's pretty much the same, except at night, which is quite a redundant statement, really. But you know what I mean. The characters are there, except they behave differently at night. For example, that priest there seems quite upset at night, which is funny, because he seems perfectly fine during the day. And I take a moment to admire the scenery in this version, because I do really like the fancy graphics in the HD versions of this game. Not that I'm a graphics enthusiast, but I can't deny when it looks better. And here we are, back in the stage select at night time. It's pretty much the same, except now you can see we get access to the first night level. Unfortunately, in this version, we only get one night level, and it's fairly short. If you know what you're doing, you could probably complete it in 10 minutes. Now, a difference between the two versions is that in the PS3 version, you get the Tails in Trouble cutscene just before the level. And that's about it. It doesn't really affect that much. And so we get introduced to the first night level in the PS3 version. Now, before I was talking about how the Werehog handled in the PS2 version, and he handles pretty much the same in this version too, except the controls are different. The grab button is now a square instead of the R1 button, which kind of confused me when I went from one version to the other. I would sometimes jump and hold the wrong button, and Sonic wouldn't grab on a ledge. But going between the versions wasn't that difficult. I did manage to wrap my head around the fact that different buttons do different things. And here we see a quick time event. When you're prompted, you press the circle button, and then you press other buttons, and Sonic will perform a finisher to kill an enemy. Now these finishers do give you more experience points, and if you really want S ranks in the Werehog stages, that's probably the best way to do it, because you get rewarded on the basis of experience points, as well as other factors, of course. But by doing those quick time events finishers, you can actually build up experience points, bonus experience points, and really bump up your rankings. Now something you'll notice there is I'm collecting medals. Now if you're not familiar with this game, you need those medals to unlock levels, and it is quite a huge issue with this game, because spoilers, you need like 120 sun medals to complete the game and unlock the final level, or the final day stage. Now something I do in this LP is show you how to get all the sun medals. Well, to correct myself, all the sun medals you need to complete the game. I don't show you the location of all of them, but what I do is I show you how to get all the medals you need to complete the game on screen. Which is why I'll spend quite, well not a lot, but I'll spend a decent amount of the night levels looking for medals, going through the hiding places. And again, there's a YouTube user called Sonic the Medals, and I used his videos as a guide to find all these medal locations. And he was a really big help. Well, those videos were a big help when recording this LP, because I was really dreading collecting the medals when I was recording this LP. Like, I was worried that I would get lost in a level looking for a medal, and thus really lengthen out the videos unnecessarily, or I would get lost, or would have to like editing backtracking, which would make the whole creating the LP a kind of an awkward situation. You know what I mean? If I was worried I would have to like record me playing a level once, and then maybe backtracking again through it to get more medals. But fortunately I'll go through each level once, as much as I need to really, so that wasn't, again, that wasn't another issue. And yeah, again, I thought the medals might be an issue, but they really weren't. So again, that's another example of me playing this game again, and actually my opinion of it going up. Actually like it more now that I've LP'd it again. That's in these night levels. Like everybody says they can drag, but if you've played them once already, they tend not to. You tend to know where to go and what to do. So again, yeah, another example of playing this game again and actually liking it more. And as you can see here, the Werehog levels on the PS3 have exactly the same gimmicks as the other ones. The doors, which you sort of spam circle to open, the poles which you shimmy up, and the ledges which you pull yourself onto. So really, like I said before, in some ways the same game, in some ways a completely different game. And before I was talking about the game mechanic, where you're trapped in a certain situation and you have to fight and defeat enemies before like an invisible wall lets you pass by. And that is something I'm really not a fan of. And this version tends to do it a lot. And also what's infuriating about this version, and it actually happens in the other version as well, so I guess both versions, is that whenever you meet a group of enemies, the game like stops you playing, moves the camera to a fancy angle, and then plays the theme. It essentially gives you like a little introductory cutscene, and that constantly stopping the game can be quite an annoyance. And another difference between the two versions are the swarming enemies. For obvious reasons, the PS3 is more powerful than the PS2, so I guess they thought they could have in lots of enemies. Although the thing is, you still get frame rate issues on these HD versions. And again, that makes me wonder about game developers. Is that if you know adding lots of enemies will cause slowdown, then why add them? You know, cut back on them. Like, you'll see the PS2 version actually has these enemies, except they're not as quite as swarmy. I think they're slightly bigger and there aren't as many of them. And frankly, that works better. And I've never been a fan of swarming enemies, if I'm honest. They're not satisfying to kill, they're hard to hit, and they just annoy you, and pick away at you. So yeah, swarming enemies, not a fan. Now, something else I'll talk about between the two versions is the graphics, and it goes without saying that the graphics in the PS3 version are far superior than the PS2 version, and likewise to the Xbox 360 version and the Wii version. But not only the polygon count, or the bitmap quality, if you will, but the levels also seem a bit sparser in the PS2 version. Like, there doesn't seem to be that many objects in them. I wouldn't say they were deserted, but there's a lot more wide open spaces. And that's something else people bring up. I mean, honestly, I can understand what they did in the PS2 version. They sort of watered it down so it would work on that console. Doesn't really bother me. And here we see the balance beam mechanic, which fortunately isn't in the PS2 version, which I think is a smart move, because I'm not a fan of it. It's not really difficult there. You sort of slow down and then just walk forward. But yeah, there's a particular level coming up later, a city level. You might know it if you've played the game before. But yeah, it's essentially a level where you have to do a lot of balancing across beams, across a bottomless pit. And it is one of the more infuriating levels in the game. Something which I'm not really 100% on. But what is a good aspect about these Werehog levels is the encouragement of exploration. Like, for example, I'm always looking for medals, which is fine when you're playing it. But again, when I was recording this, I was worried that people wouldn't want to watch me search every nook and cranny. But like I said, that's an issue I dealt with. But nevertheless, if you're not a fan of exploring, going in secret alleyways, having a look around, then I could understand why you might think this game would be a bit tedious. Or at least the Werehog sections, at least. I guess it's a callback to those early 90s platformers, which were essentially all about collecting. But yeah, lots of things to hide. I mean lots of things to find in these levels. Like just now, you see multiple doorways and multiple alleyways, with some unlockables there. Now, something you'll see in the side of the screen there, a 72 hit combo. And again, that's another aspect which raises up your rank. And to spoil something here, I do die near the end of the level. And of course, if you die, your score goes back to 0, which means you'll probably lose out on an S rank. Which I guess makes sense, but yeah, it's annoying, to say the least. And I don't get an S rank here. Pity. Now, to collect this Moo medal, you obviously need the box here. Although I think you can get it using a special uppercut punch move, which is in the game. But yeah, try and keep the box intact if you want that medal. Oh, and I was also thinking about the lack of variety in the Werehog levels. Like you see now, there's a block puzzle where you pick up the red block and put it in the red slot, and you do the same with a green block. And for me, if they did that on just one level, it would be fine. But they seem to repeat the mechanic. And for me, the Werehog levels, they do seem to be very similar. You grab on ledges, you grab on poles, you beat up enemies, you solve a block puzzle. And there doesn't seem to be that much variety. Although, arguably, that's the same problem with the day levels. They don't have much variety either. You boost forward, your quick step, your hopping attack, you boost again, you boost some more, and you boost even more. But of course the difference is that running fast is inherently fun. It's naturally fun. So we don't have a problem with the fact that those levels are repetitive. And I don't either. Yeah, they're repetitive, but they're fun. Because running fast is just fun, inherently fun. Now at this point I realise I've missed a medal. But of course the gate's right behind me, so alas, it is gone forever. I could re-enter the level, but no. Now, another aspect which isn't really developed or hinted on is a sort of stealth aspect. Sometimes enemies won't see you straight away and you can sort of sneak up behind them and get in a sneak attack, which is really a game mechanic I barely use. I'm just happy to attack them. And I say it's not really developed, like there are no stealth sections in the game, which you might be pleased to hear about. I'm not a fan of forced stealth sections in games. Like if I play a stealth game like Hitman or Metal Gear Solid, yeah, I expect to be stealthy in those games because that's what they're about. But when you play like an action game or a platformer and they suddenly give you a stealth section, it can be kind of jarring. Although, to use a good example, if anyone's played The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker, that game sort of gives you an obligatory stealth section early on. And I actually do like that section. It's, you know, you're sort of sneaking into the castle, if anyone remembers that part of that game. But anyway, yeah, if I want to play a stealth game, I'll play a stealth game. So the fact that the stealth aspect isn't really expanded upon is no, it's not really an issue. It's something I'm glad they've done. Flying enemies there used as a bridge. So just like Sonic during the day there. Now you can see there that we have like a sort of a rogue moon medal, which isn't really that hard to get. You just need to be careful with your timing. Maybe I should have edited out the backtracking, but oh well. It's just a couple more seconds. And again, yeah, use timing and also use your double jump effectively. Now, something I haven't talked about is the fact that Sonic does have a double jump in this game. It's used for getting extra height, although the trouble is, whenever you use the double jump, you lose all momentum. Like if you're jumping forward, you press the double jump, you go upwards, but you don't go forwards that much. And I hope I'm explaining this correctly, but you can be jumping across a long pit, and if you press double jump too early, you won't get that much distance. So you can actually die by using the double jump. The best way to approach it is to time it perfectly. Like, don't just press jump and then double jump. Press jump, wait like a split second or two, then press double jump to get the most height or the most out of your jump. Now at this point we're introduced to probably one of the more annoying enemies in the game. He's sort of the big heavy character that swings a giant trunk around, a club even. And what makes him annoying is his shockwave attack. Because he'll jump on the ground, cause a huge shockwave, which will send you flying back, by the way. But he will not only do that once, he'll do that repeatedly. So you can be hit by a shockwave, you're trying to get up, then you get hit by another shockwave, and if you're like cornered, you can die. And there's even a level with like set on rooftops with one huge bottomless pit, and these enemies will spam shockwave and most likely throw you off the edge. And yeah, anyone who's played this game really doesn't like these enemies, and I'm not a fan of them either. So yeah, they're probably one of the more dickish aspects of the game. And you can see that I'm trying to desperately use a quick time event to finish him off, which is a nice move. And something you'll see here is that rings give you health. So I strategically didn't collect all the rings as soon as I entered the arena. I sort of left some, so I would have some health afterwards. And there, critical attack, you get more experience points, which really helps. It really helps you level up the werehog. And speaking of which, like in the PS2 version, you get the option to level up whatever stat you want. And I would recommend at the beginning of the game to level up the werehog, just because his levels are based on combat and life bars and combos, and you will have an easier time if you level those up. Like, you can level up Sonic's speed and Sonic's boost gauge, but those aren't really an issue. It's more important to level up the werehog. And you see a variety of stats there. Combat teaches you new moves. Strength makes you stronger. Life ups your life bar. Unleashed increases the amount of time you can spend unleashed, which is like a rage mode. And shield ups your blocking ability. Now in the PS3 version, once you complete the night level, you get the same cutscene of Sonic and Tails meeting up and flying off to a new location. Although the PS3 version does do something slightly different and gives you a sort of mini game. And here's the Tornado minigame. Now this is another aspect which is usually sneered at when it comes to Sonic Unleashed. And I think the main problem is not the fact that they gave us a flying shooting minigame. It's the fact that they made it a quick time event. And you'll see now you actually have no control over the airplane itself. You can't move it left or right or fire whenever you want. You fly along, you get prompted with a button command. You press the button and the plane shoots the said enemy down. Now I am really not a fan of this minigame. I don't hate it, and if you're not a fan either, you'll be pleased to know that this really doesn't come up that much throughout the game. In fact, you only have to do this twice. And really, it's not a big issue either, because even though I don't like it, it barely comes up. I don't have to do it that often. Now, what is a nice touch about the design of the Tornado 1 as Tails calls it, is that it's red and yellow, like the Tornado in the classic games. But what's another good feature is that it has the X formation, the sort of battle mode from Sonic Adventure. So it's nice how it incorporates those two designs together. And yeah, this minigame, it was such a misstep, because if anyone's played Sonic Adventure, then you should recognise that they gave us a minigame like this in that game too. Except it was kind of like a Star Fox clone, and you could move the plane left and right and shoot enemies. And you know, that minigame was really fun. I really liked that minigame. And to turn it into this sort of automated QuickTime event, for me, was a misstep. Now, in the PS2 version, they don't get this minigame. They just go straight into the world map. And I'm not sure which version I prefer. Would I prefer a bland minigame or no minigame at all? Actually, I would say I would prefer having this minigame in there, just because it's a bit more variety, I suppose. Between Sonic and the Werehog, this game could have done with more variety, I suppose. Yeah, in fact, they should have made it like a proper, you know, input required fighting game, shooting game, if you will. That would have been fun. I was just looking at those flying enemies, And it is interesting because I don't think you see them anywhere else in the game. So at least they give you some original enemies for this minigame. And it is a quite nice sky we're flying through. It's very blue, very idyllic. Very nice to look at. Oh, and here's another reason why I'm glad this minigame is at least here. Because it gives you a Robotnik boss. And frankly, you can't have too many of those. The Egg Cauldron. Sort of like a bronze flying battleship. I guess kind of reminiscent of Wing Fortress from Sonic the Hedgehog 1. Or the Egg Carrier from the Sonic Adventure game. But yes, you can see how it's done here. You hit the buttons to attack the enemies, and once they're out of the way, you can then attack the central mechanism. And I guess what's a nice touch is that Robotnik has modelled yet another machine after himself. It's sort of round and plump like his, and it also has the whiskers he has as well. So Dr. Robotnik, the egomaniac, I suppose. Yeah, and spoiler warnings, I get through these minigames without dying, but I do each one just by the skin of my teeth. You can see now, 40%, I'm nearly out of there. But I think you can press the triggers to up your energy or up your shield. I honestly don't know how they work. Yeah, if you press the triggers, apparently you're supposed to transfer energy. Is it one from the other, or do you generate energy? I don't know. And I never gave too much thought to it. And speaking of which, the PS3 version does have a trophy for these minigames, where if you complete them without taking a hit, you get an achievement point. And fuck you, game, fuck you. That's something I wouldn't even bother with. Just because I guess getting through these minigames without taking a hit isn't impossible, but I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. Like, I don't hate them, but I'm not doing that either. And with 10% health left, I just managed to scrape my way through. And so that's how the PS3 handles the first night level. Now, coming up next, we'll advance the story in Spagonia, and a city based off Italy. So I hope you've enjoyed it. Please join me again. Oh, and thanks for watching. If you stayed the whole hour, it's appreciated. It's appreciated.